what's up, you guys? How y'all doing? Wow. The Tampa Supercross provided an unlikely first-time winner in Malcolm Stewart. That had to have been the most feel-good story of the entire night. I'll tell you that right now. I got a few things to say about some guys, but first of all, before I do that, just remember, subscribe if you think that I'm worth listening to. I don't have the same kind of insight as Cooksey does, but you know what? I got a few things to say myself about the race. I'm going to talk about the 450 class only. I'm going to do the 250 class for another day, but I also have my recap of UH softball to take care of, but I will be attending a practice session for my UH men's basketball team, for my local college basketball team, UH men's basketball. I'm going to do that tomorrow. I'm going to try to get some shots there and maybe show you all there, maybe even go live if I want to, but we'll see what happens here. So with that being said, let's get into this. So here comes my banner here. I'm going to talk about the 450 class only. This is only the tip of the iceberg here. Malcolm Stewart wins first 450 race. Ken Roczen lost some of my respect. I also have some things to say about Chase Sexton as well. Some of it kind of similar to Cooksey, but I'm going to keep it in my own words just so I don't outright copy him. But still, anyway, starting with Malcolm Stewart. Wowee. How many of you picked Malcolm Stewart to win this race? Because I certainly didn't. And I got to tell you, I kept saying on social media and even to my dad after the race, that was the Kenny Keelan ride that Malcolm Stewart put on. Because I remember back in the day watching the races on ESPN2 where David Bailey talked about the only guy who won in Florida that was from Florida was Kenny Keelan. And Malcolm Stewart did just that. And that was a feel-good story, as I said earlier. And I know that Cooksey talked about, he compared it to when Dale Earnhardt won Daytona for the first time back around 98, somewhere around there. Well, I'm going to do one of my own examples here using the sport of Supercross. How many of you guys remember back to 1997 when Jeremy McGrath finally won his first race of the 97 season on that Suzuki? Because he had that disagreement with Honda, the politics of the contract, which prevented him from testing out other watercraft or all that kind of stuff from Honda. And then on December 31st, 1996, Jeremy McGrath would leave for Suzuki. And then, as a result of some early California rains, Jeremy McGrath wasn't able to get a lot of seat time on his new Suzuki. So he had to use the Supercross season as some test sessions per se. And then, when Jeremy got his first win of the season, he replaced the forks on his Suzuki with some forks from his old Honda with that steel-framed Honda he loved so much, and the results started to show. And although it's only added up to 2 wins in Supercross in 97, it was clear that Jeremy found his old self. But how Malcolm Stewart did that, and that was a feel-good thing before I get back to Stewart, that was a feel-good thing for Jeremy McGrath after 43 wins on a Honda. And then it was looking like he might retire after 96 and enroll in school under scholarship from Honda, but instead he continued racing. And it may have looked like a bad option, but Jeremy made the most of it. And when he won at Minneapolis that year, 1997, that was a season where it could have been some booze, like David Bailey once said. But when you consider all the different winners going around, like Albertine, Emick, Henry, Damon Huffman, Ezra Lusk later in the season, and then Jeremy McGrath, of course. That was the kind of parody that made 1997 the season that it was. And that was the year that I started following the sport. So the way that how everybody reacted to Malcolm Stewart after winning Tampa kind of made me think of when McGrath won the 97 Minneapolis race, which was his first win on the new Suzuki. And I got to tell you, that was pretty similar. But I got to tell you, now, congrats to Malcolm Stewart. Is he going to make it 2 in a row? I'm not sure. That was only one night. So if Malcolm can get off to a good start, don't rule out him going for 2 in a row or being able to pull off 2 wins in a row. Now, the second thing I'm going to talk about is what's on my banner here. Why do I say that Ken Roczen lost some of my respect? Because of how he acted after the heat race and that terrifying crash in the main event in the sand section. And I got to tell you, deep down, I had a bad feeling that sand section was going to claim somebody seriously. And unfortunately, Ken Roczen turned out to be that guy. Turns out my gut feeling was right. Okay? Now, I'm going to say this right now. What happened to Roczen in the sand was very unfortunate, like I said, but those who blame Jeremy Hand for causing that incident, you're completely delusional. Or even if you blame Tristan Lane for that matter, because there was nothing they could do. Because when you come around to the sand section, you can find a great line there, and then the next lap you come around, that line's not going to be there anymore. But for what happened to Roczen, when you look back at what happened in the heat race, when he tangled with some of the beta guys, like Mitchell Harrison and Benny Bloss, and he got in that heated argument with Bloss after the heat race, that might have carried over into the main event. And, you know, I've been there before where you go after someone and then you don't even know it. And then you don't even know that you complain to the wrong guy. That kind of stuff can mess with your focus. That's like getting in a fight with an innocent person who you have no idea about. And that's kind of like, you look at a high school bully who picks on you, and then you're all pissed off, and then you want to get back at him, and then that bully drops the blame on somebody else and makes him the fall guy, and he gets away scot-free. Well, that's what happened with Malcolm Stewart. Or no, I'm sorry, not Malcolm Stewart, but Ken Roczen. I'm sorry. That's what happened with Ken Roczen. And that led me to believe that what happened in the heat race carried over into the main event. And somewhere, when Bloss saw that crash on social media, he was probably thinking karma. And you know what they say? Karma's a bitch. And let me tell you, what Roczen did, that was karma for sure. Because wrong guy, that kind of stuff can mess with your focus, like I talked about earlier. And that led me to believe that may have carried over into the main event. I mean, look at what happened when Ricky Carmichael was booed by the crowd at Anaheim 1 in that incident in the heat race with Travis Pastrana. The crowd, I could understand that they wanted to see a different winner in Travis Pastrana specifically, but the only thing Carmichael was guilty of that night was really, really poor judgment from the crowd. And then the crowd just, because they stood up and booed Carmichael when it wasn't really Ricky's fault. And what happened with Roczen and the two lappers, Jeremy Hand and Tristan Lane, that wasn't their fault either. That was totally a racing incident and completely on Ken Roczen. But why did Ken Roczen lose some of my respect as well? What happened when he was walking off the track and that camera guy had tripped over the tough block and Roczen just looked at him and walked away? In today's society, with all kinds of social media like X, Instagram, YouTube, you could go viral for all the wrong reasons. And I really hope that Ken Roczen did not just open that can of worms. Because really, I mean, it's one thing that you had a crappy night. Kenny, I know you had a crappy night, but that doesn't excuse you being a douche and just walking away from the cameraman and just leaving him down on the ground. If that were me, I wouldn't want to make my night any worse, and I wouldn't want to deposit that on somebody else. Let me tell you. But really, I am so not giving Ken Roczen a pass on that because really, like I said earlier, that's no excuse for you to act like a douche. And in my opinion, if there was a Douche of the Night award, Ken Roczen won it and then some. Because seriously, it's one thing to have a bad night, but you don't have to take it out on somebody else. And that's what Ken Roczen did. And that's not cool, really. So Kenny, I hope you didn't go viral for all the wrong reasons, pal. Let me tell you. And I really don't care what everybody else has to say. If they have differing opinions, that's fine. But this is my take on it. And while I do think that, and while I understand how pissed off Roczen was, what he did to that camera guy was no excuse. But then again, if you're that camera guy, if Roczen walking away was probably a good thing, because how many of you remember that soccer player who spit in the camera guy's lenses on his camera during one of the soccer games? I don't know who that was. I can't remember who that was, but that just also made me think of that too. And I can tell you that. I can tell you this right now. That guy probably faced disciplinary actions. Is Ken Roczen going to face any disciplinary actions? Probably not. But if he goes viral for all the wrong reasons, that's punishment enough. Let me tell you. Because if this were 20 years ago, where there was hardly any YouTube, hardly any Instagram, hardly any Twitter or X, that kind of stuff would have gone unnoticed. And you were only there to witness it with your own eyes, okay? But like I said, that doesn't excuse you being a douche to somebody, especially if you're having a crappy night like how Ken Roczen did, okay? But now, Chase Sexton, this one really, really hurt, as Cooksey said. And I agree. That one hurt for Chase Sexton. Now, had he not gone down, I think he would have held off Malcolm Stewart for a little longer. Would Sexton have won the race? I wouldn't have ruled it out. Do I think he would have won? Sure. He would have made up some time somewhere else on Malcolm Stewart. And although Malcolm was going to the whoops like a freight train, Sexton had a line or two that was also just as fast. Was he picking up time? Was he picking up a significant amount of time? No, but he definitely would have held off Malcolm Stewart for much, much longer, if not the end of the race. And towards the end, I thought that Sexton was figuring out the whoops until he went down. And had he not gone down, I don't think Malcolm would have gotten him. And then Sexton had to nurse it home because he broke the throttle. He broke the front brake and his throttle, which is really unfortunate, let me tell you. Because for Sexton to salvage a fifth place out of that was a great salvage for sure. But he's going to look back. Fortunately, he does have the red plate, so that's a good takeaway. But sometimes it may help to slow down and go a little faster, as Aaron Bates once asked James Stewart. And as Aaron Bates has said before, like, you got to slow down and go a little faster. But that was a tough track. It looked to me like Sexton had that figured out aside from the whoops. But still, that one hurt for Chase Sexton, and I feel so bad for him, for sure. Probably just as bad as what happened to Tristan Lane and Jeremy Hand. Now, Eli Tomac, everybody's been going off about beast mode, beast mode, beast mode. Well, what I saw for the last 2 races, complete BS, brah. Let me tell you, don't even tell me beast mode, because he has to do that at least back to back or 2 out of 3 for me to be convinced. Because it's only one night. How can you be convinced beast mode is back after just one race? You don't. And unless your expectation rate is considerably lower, that wasn't beast mode at all from Eli Tomac. That was another false alarm. But for Eli Tomac to have the same or a similar thing happen to him in practice, like what happened with Jet Lawrence at Glendale, that hurts. That hurts the title chase. And it certainly hurts the scope of Eli Tomac's possible final season. Has he confirmed it? No, but still, that's going to hurt for quite a while, let me tell you. But, Eli Tomac theoretically doesn't really have a lot left to prove. He probably could have retired after the 24th season, but at the same time, I don't think he would have wanted to go out off of so many injuries and missing so many races in motocross. And quite frankly, you couldn't blame Tomac for wanting to come back. But something tells me that if Eli Tomac is really that hurt, to be running around in last place and finishing 17th, something tells me that Detroit could be the last time Eli Tomac swings a leg over a bike. Not going to lie to you. But that was very unfortunate. Jet Lawrence dropping out was unfortunate. I thought that was. But Eli Tomac getting hurt in practice really took the cake. And I thought there was a part of me that felt that Tomac was just going to hide it and be like, what injury? The guy looks fine to me. But it was clear that he was not fine for sure. He was really, really sore. And quite frankly, I'll be surprised if Eli Tomac even lasts the rest of the season. So, that was kind of like a mixed bag, but quite frankly, I'm glad I stayed home and watched that on Peacock for sure. But congrats to Malcolm Stewart on win number 1. Like I said, that was a feel-good story, and I hope you liked my analogy of what happened with Jeremy McGrath of 97. So anyway, guys, thanks for watching. And remember, subscribe. I'll have my 250 video up later in the week and my recap of UH softball from Saturday night, or Friday night, I should say. I got to get that out of the way soon. But still, thanks, guys. Subscribe, and I'll see you all for the 250 recap.